English humour. A brief survey of the panorama of English language humour. Part 12. The Maverick and the Establishment. Britain had a Conservative government from 1951 to 1964. You'll notice that's just around about when this satire boom started off. The Suez Canal crisis of 1956 helped the British to realise they weren't quite as big as they thought they were on the world stage. Previously well-regarded concepts such as tradition and the establishment came under attack, as we've seen on the television, starting with That Was the Week That Was. And we've examined a couple of the ways in which TV incorporated the best of the nation's comedians. But what were people doing when they weren't appearing on the television? Well, Peter Cook, who was born in Torquay in 1937, one of the founders of Private Eye, a comedian who, by his own admission, lost all ambition when he was 26. But that didn't stop him having a successful TV career, especially in his partnership with Dudley Moore in a programme called Not Only, But Also. Peter Cook is very, very dry comedian with a great use of understatement. In one of the sketches he does with Dudley Moore, Mr. Moore presents himself in a theatrical agent's office hoping to get the role of Tarzan. The only problem is he only has one leg. But of course, Cook, playing the typical polite Englishman, can only draw attention to this in a roundabout way.
Now, Mr. Spigot, I couldn't help noticing, almost at once, that you are a one-legged person.
You noticed that?
I noticed that, Mr. Spigot, when you've been in the business as long as I have. Get to notice these little things almost instinctively.
Of course, yeah.
Now, Mr. Spigot, need I point out to you where your deficiency lies as regards lending the role? It is in the leg division that you are deficient.
The leg division.
The leg division, Mr. Spigot, you are deficient in it to the tune of 1.
In another sketch, Cook, dressed as a nun, explains in an interview what the leaping nuns of the Order of St. Beryl's actually do, which was effectively to leap all day to show their love for the Lord. Or again, he could be a man who's dedicated his whole life to teaching starlings to sing underwater. And have you had any success? The interviewer asks. No. And then, leaving us a couple of still watchable films, namely Bedazzled and The Rise and Rise of Michael Rimmer, he kind of disappeared from the scene. Unfortunately, in those days, the BBC, in a money-saving drive, and I suppose just not realising what the future would hold, erased most of the tapes of the shows that they recorded. In fact, Cook himself tried to save some by offering to buy them, but was denied for copyright reasons. Inexplicably. In later life, he restricted himself to NW3 in the north of London, where he'd been barred from many, if not all, of the local pubs, and amused himself by pretending to be a Norwegian fisherman, often ringing London's late-night phone-in programmes in his new character. His partner Dudley Moore went on to great success in America, in films, but I'm focusing on Peter Cook here because he was by far the more representative of English humour, with his dry, deadbeat manner. His heavy drinking might have been responsible for his early death at the age of 57, but let's look back on happier times now, as the reason I've chosen Peter Cook is because in the 1960s, just when the satire boom was coming to an end, and Cook said that England was about to sink giggling into the sea, and also resentful of the fact that David Frost, according to Cook, had copied Cook's stage persona, earning him the nickname the bubonic plagiarist, and that his only regret in life was saving David Frost from drowning, nonetheless had enough clout to open a club at 18 Greek Street in Soho, right in the centre of London. He called this club The Establishment, in what he once said was his best ever joke. Often supposed to have been opened as a comedy venue, but it was in fact more likely to put on jazz groups in its early years. It was modelled, according to Cook, on, I quote, those wonderful Berlin cabarets, which did so much to stop the rise of Hitler and prevent the outbreak of the Second World War. Now, one of the tricks it had was it was a members-only venue, so it could skate around the censorship restrictions. This meant they were able to host rather outrageous comedians like Lenny Bruce from America or Barry Humphries from Australia, whose stint at the club really launched his British career. As we've seen throughout this history, the comedian was often relegated to a side spot, and it took music hall for people to recognise the genius of the lone figure on stage entertaining people with humour. But he still didn't have his dedicated club, and nor was the Establishment the first dedicated comedy club, but it did mark a kind of style. Though we have to wait until around about the 80s until we get the boom in live stand-up comedy, which, of course, we'll be looking at soon.